I couldn't disagree with him saying the impact on the markets and so forth. My frustration for the 24 hours of this virus spreading, what impact would that have on the financial markets, on our productivity and so forth?
It's an example of, in this case, the Prime Minister trying to balance the health impacts against the economic impacts of taking these decisions.
We didn't get a chance to discuss it.
Well, you're right. He'd already taken that decision and told you of his decision.
That's right.
We see there a reference to the COBRA for the next day. That was Friday, the 20th of March. You attended that COBRA meeting as well, did you not?
Yes, I did, yeah.
And it was this COBRA meeting, if we look at paragraph 94 of your statement, please, about 4 lines down, you say, the PM was not at this COBRA meeting, which I found extraordinary given the circumstances. Did you ask, were you told why the Prime Minister was not at that COBRA meeting?
I can't remember. It must have been raised, but I can't remember the explanation why he wasn't there.
Do you remember having any reaction to whatever explanation you were given?
It surprised me because one of the huge advantages of the Prime Minister chairing COBRA is often, not unreasonably, there'll be different points of view. And the Prime Minister, as the boss, can arbitrate on the different points of view. To paraphrase you, can balance those points of view. And with respect to Michael Gove as the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, if there was a difference, it's quite difficult for him to arbitrate and decide. Although to give Michael Gove credit, he did.
In any event, you can't. We may well hear from Mr. Johnson, but you can't remember why it was that he wasn't at that meeting. Later on in this paragraph, you describe a sort of shifting. Initially, the meeting being in favour of pushing off the closure of hospitality venues into the weekend, but a counter-argument being made that it should be that day, at the end of the day, on that Friday. That's right. And in the end, that other argument, the Friday argument, prevailing.
That's right. This was to Michael Gove's credit. He decided to agree with those of us lobbying for Friday night rather than Saturday.
There's one more sequence of exchanges between you and the Prime Minister that I want to ask you about in this sort of part of the chronology, and that is a letter you wrote and then a call you had with him on Sunday, the 22nd of March. Let's look, please, at the letter first. So that is 118939. So let's remind ourselves, as I say, Mr. Khan, this was the Sunday just before the lockdown was announced. In fact, the next day. One gets the impression from your statement you were at home on that day, but you wrote this letter from home.
Yep.
And sent it to him by email.
So that's Sadiq Khan in the COVID inquiry being interviewed by one of the other lawyers, that's Andrew O'Connor. He appears to be sulking a little that he wasn't consulted by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister was telling him what the government was doing.
Sadiq Khan always has a manner of being slightly sulky about him, doesn't he? We're seeing a letter here that he obviously wrote. I think this is at the time. We're looking at that he felt like he was defending his city of London and that Boris Johnson wasn't necessarily making the right decisions. And of course he will be making political capital out of this. That's precisely what Sadiq Khan does in any situation. Sadiq Khan does what's right for Sadiq Khan.
Yeah.
I was going to say for the Labour Party, but most of the time I'm not even sure he's that bothered about that.
No, I mean he's fallen out with the Labour leader over Gaza, of course.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting when I haven't a lot of time for Sadiq Khan, as you well know. I've got a lot more time for the Mayor of Greater Manchester,
Me too.
Andy Burnham. He's giving evidence this afternoon, I think.
Yeah,
and of course,
he is.
He had that. Do you remember the very celebrated standoff with Boris Johnson, where he actually did a press conference in the street with all the other mayors, and they all had to stand so many feet apart because they brought in yet more restrictions. Was it Tier 3? Remember those?
Do you remember when they wouldn't allow Manchester to go into a lesser tier?
Yeah.
And Andy Burnham was fighting furiously to have the people of his city released from their imprisonment.
And he won.
You can't believe it happened, can you?
He won the standoff.
Yeah, I think he did.
Because he's a clever, telegenic communicator.
Yeah.
So we'll keep you up to date with what's happening there in the COVID inquiry.
It's hard to make out. Because do you know what they do? Lawyers will never use 10 words when they can use 1,000 words, will they? So they drag it on. They drag it on and on and on and on.